It was actually a few years into my engineering career. I used to lie awake 3 o'clock every morning, terrified that that would be the day they finally found me out, that my luck would run out, that they would realise they'd made a mistake hiring me, that I'd pulled the wool over the eyes not just of my university lecturers, but of everybody who'd hired me since. I didn't belong. Who was I to be a senior engineer? Who was I to be one of the first people in Europe trained in Six Sigma when I didn't really understand statistics? Who was I to say you should shut down the production line costing $2,000 a minute? And this is like years ago, yeah? And much more now. What if today was the day they finally realised I wasn't good enough? And I remember realising I had to talk to somebody about this. It was impacting my home life. I was irritable, I was angry. It was impacting my working relationships. It was a very high octane environment, and I was sparring off the other people. I didn't like who I was showing up as being in order to cope with what was happening inside and to fit in the outside world I was in. And I remember talking to a fellow engineer, the only other female engineer on the staff. We were walking through a bit of the factory that wasn't in use. We had each a cup of that coffee stuff you get from the machines in a factory where you need asbestos fingers to be able to drink it. She was called Claire as well. And I remember saying to her, and I couldn't look at her, my heart was racing and my breathing was up here and my hands were all clammy. It's like, deep breath. I said, Claire, do you ever worry that they're going to find you out? That they made a mistake choosing you? That you're not good enough, that you're a fraud, that you're faking it and that you don't belong? And I remember feeling every single heartbeat as I waited for her answer. She looked at me. She almost whispered, "You too?" That discussion didn't really go anywhere. Imposter syndrome wasn't as widely known back then, nearly 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now. And I just pushed it on down and I pushed on through, and I ended up actually leaving that job, going travelling, ending up becoming head of market research at one of the world's most disruptive brands. Then after a few years of studying psychology and NLP and all sorts of other modalities, I realised I couldn't make a big enough difference in a manufacturing company. I wanted to be out there really helping people. It was how people ticked, applying the Six Sigma, the engineering, the logic, to doing that inside work that really did it for me. And I did a lot of Eastern stuff as well, so there was the more spiritual side balanced in. And I remember that brave morning, the first clients I was working with after I left the corporate world. The first one seemed completely confident, had their act together. They had some really, really high energy coping strategies to be able to cope with the fear that they would be found out. And then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I quickly realised there was a pattern. I was working with these senior leaders. They were running divisions, MDs, CEOs, and so many of them were absolutely terrified inside that someone was going to find out they were winging it. Back then, all I had to share with them was better coping strategies, but it set me on a mission. I soon realised this thing had a name: Imposter Syndrome. I spent the next 10 to 15 years experimenting, studying, practicing, researching, trying stuff out for myself, working with the stuff that worked on my clients, building it into processes that could work without me even being there. And then I realised that I'd been told a great big lie. I, like so many, had been told imposter syndrome's incurable. And I discovered that's simply not true. You can set yourself free from it, but the classic coaching techniques and even a lot of the NLP stuff I'd been doing wasn't enough. You needed to go deeper to the identity level. The imposter syndrome iceberg model that I developed from our 2019 landmark research studies, a link to a video on that below, explains why you need to do it at the identity level and mindset's not enough. And when I started working with people at that level on imposter syndrome, they were creating breakthroughs. It was gone in weeks. Like, people who'd been crippled by it were saying, "This is just amazing, I don't recognise myself." Yeah, they were getting feedback from their team members and their boss saying, "What have you been doing? It's so much easier to work with you. You have all these brilliant ideas we didn't know about. They were getting promoted, they were getting massive pay rises, and they were free from that 3 a.m. anxiety that they might be found out as a fraud. So that is why I do what I do. I have this big dream. I don't want anybody to ever have to lie awake in the dark of the night worrying that they might be found out as not good enough. So I'm on a mission to get this work out there to the world. If you can help me with that, please let me know. The simplest way as well, ditching imposter syndrome, it's sitting there waiting for you. But if you don't read it, it can't help you. Or work with me on my imposter syndrome bootcamp, or come and do some of the one-to-one work with me or one of my mentors. But above all, remember, it isn't something you have to put up with. If you're feeling this way and it's making you self-sabotage and it's causing you pain, perhaps today could be the day you choose to turn that around. I can help you with my imposter syndrome assessment. It's research-backed and it gives you a personalised action plan with some suggestions of things you can do before you go to bed tonight to already start making a difference. And if you want to make sure that you've got what you need to be able to ditch imposter syndrome, please subscribe, hit that little bell thing so you get a notification when there's a new video. And above all, do something before the end of the day to press pause on that self-talk and to allow yourself to hope and to know there is plenty you can do. You don't have to put up with this anymore. You can set yourself free from it so you can show up as all of who you really are and have the impact that your ideas and dreams deserve.